Grey County.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests this week are Lori Wilder, Director of Education at the Bluewater District School Board, and Jane Thomson, who is the chair of the school board and obviously a trustee as well. So, Lori, Jane, welcome. Good to have you back again.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for having us back, David.
Well, I must say that if there is anything that we can talk about, it's everything to do with education. I mean, let's be honest. It seems that every time we turn around, the Minister Lecce is standing up in a news conference, making an announcement, and parents are going, oh my goodness, how does this affect me? And I'm sure the same thing must be true of you. Lori, you're saying, okay, how does this affect us at this board? And Jane, you're saying, how does this affect our students? And it's not an easy job, is it?
Well, we do seem to manage. We have a great staff supporting all of our students across the system, and we have a wonderful board of trustees as well, with Jane being the chair of our board. It's a great group to work with. So we have a lot of people supporting this process.
And that's half the battle, isn't it? When you've got a great team behind you, you can roll with whatever gets rolled out at the higher levels, and just the question is, okay, how does this affect us, and how do we put this into play?
I think we also have to give parents a lot of credit, because they've had to go with the flow and react to the changes as they come along, and they've done so with a lot of resiliency to just keep managing and move forward.
Well, when we talked last, and that would have been back in May, I believe, or late April, early May, we were looking forward to summer, looking forward to getting back in the classroom, but, well, not quite. We were back in the classroom, but it was we're now, the students are at least in the secondary level, are doing a quadmaster system. Is that right? Are they still on the quadmaster system here?
They are. They're still in the quadmaster system, but Minister Lecce has just announced that beginning February for second semester, we can return to a regular semester system. So that is good news, I think, for all our students and our staff. So we have to consult with our local medical officer of health to ensure that they are okay with that process. And then there'll be things that we need to do to make sure our families have enough notice and our students have enough notice. We'll consult with our union partners as well before we actually make that move. We also have some technology aspects, just moving from one system with a modified semester to 4 periods a day, which is a regular system. We'll take some changes from an IT point of view as well. So some things to work through, and we want to discuss it as well with our trustees at an upcoming meeting so that they are aware and in the know also.
So if I were to be a parent and hearing this announcement, what would be the best advice you'd give to a parent right now?
Well, I think that it's really good news for our students and staff, and we're certainly happy to plan for this, but I think just if they can hold off, we will make a more official announcement, because we're still in the discussion phase at this point in time. So because I know some students, for example, are in a co-op program, and we want to make sure that we're not disrupting different schedules that students may already have before they begin anew in second semester.
Yes, that's a very good point, Laurie. I think that the co-op students, and I should add, we've had some great co-op students at Rogers over the years. I don't think there are any right now, but we've been a great partner at Rogers, and I've met some really great students who've been part of the co-op program. They've got that to kind of get their heads around. Actually, and I should also add, I heard from an employer recently who said they really like the co-op students because they're the ones who really work hard. So, a real credit to the co-op students who were a part of the program. But I like your point about just wait, because it really is. It's 9 weeks at least before you're going to be into from the show of when we're taping. It's going to be at least 8-9 weeks before this has to be implemented. There's still a lot of work to do, it sounds like.
That's correct. We do, of course, have Christmas in there, or the holiday season. So in terms of instructional time, it's not that long. It's closer to 7 or 8, 6, 7, 8. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but certainly, and we have to keep an eye, supported by a local medical officer of health, in terms of our COVID rates in the area in our decision. Jane, I know you were going to say something there, I think.
No, not at all. I just think it's really important to consider all of the aspects before we make a decision prematurely, that to take everything into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and certainly our rates here in Grey Bruce are very good. I saw the provincial government figures today saying it looks like we're almost at the bottom of the list in terms of the number of cases per whatever, as opposed to some of the hot zones in the province. So we're certainly in, but that could change. That could change dramatically. The other thing that I noticed is in a recent announcement, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did I see something about COVID testing being done, and students will be able to do at-home COVID testing?
Yes, there have been a lot of recent announcements in that regard. I think probably leading up to the holiday season, as well as being back into schools, just with the colder weather coming. So the ministry has offered take-home PCR self-collection kits to schools starting in mid-November, and we haven't seen those quite yet. There's also a test-to-stay approach. When a case occurs in a school, just to support those students who are asymptomatic and unvaccinated, the students can use a rapid antigen screening test at the discretion of public health to avoid whole school dismissals. And the other interesting thing that was just announced is that the ministry will be distributing rapid antigen screening tests to all schools ahead of the December break, and that each student can take home a pack of 5 rapid antigen tests to use over the holidays and throughout the return to in-person learning. It's all voluntary, and it will not prevent them from returning back to school if they choose not to use them, but it's just to help support families in making some informed decisions, if they choose to, before their students return to school after the holiday.
Yeah, it strikes me that that's probably a very helpful gesture or helpful practice, because if we want kids to enjoy their Christmas break and all the good things that go with it, but there is a risk, and if they do a test before they come back to school, that'll help. Certainly, if there's any diagnostic issues to be done, you can at least follow those up. So sounds like a reasonable idea. And now the kid don't tell me the kids will be bringing these home before Christmas. Is that right? Did I hear you say that right?
They will. The kits with 5 tests, they will be sent home before the holidays with the students. Yes.
Well, let's hope they don't end up under the tree wrapped or something like that. Now, the big news on the day we're having this conversation is that the province has opened up vaccination appointments for children between the ages of 5 and 12. And that's the unvaccinated cohort, the group of kids that they were waiting on the pediatric dose of the vaccines, and that's been approved. And now the province is saying, let's go. So for parents who choose to vaccinate their children, that is the option. Are there any policies that will be in place regarding vaccination at the school board, or is it just a continuation down the line from the higher grades?
This is going to look a little different, because for children in this age group, they do require parent permission to have the vaccination. So public health is taking the lead on this, not the board. Will there be clinics in schools? Perhaps Public Health will reach out to us to do so, to host clinics. Our sense is they would be on weekends and after hours so that parents can attend or guardians can attend with the child. They just, those children, they're at a vulnerable age and it's important to have their parents with them if that's the option of the family. So Public Health is definitely taking the lead on this age group for vaccinations.
So people should be listening to the messages from Public Health on the pediatric vaccinations for their children.
For sure. But if we are able to support them in their communications, we will definitely do that and send out anything we can using our communication channels with parents. We will definitely help support that process.
Great. Well, we will just have to wait and see. And certainly, there were a lot of kids out at the Santa Claus parade here in Owen Sound on the weekend. And I have to say they were so excited. And I think that, if we can help them get back into their learning routines and get back into some semblance of what was, we're getting there, but it's going to take some time and working together to be sure. Now, Jane, given do the trustees sort of stand outside of these decisions around COVID? Are they left to the administration? They're sort of operational issues as opposed to governance issues?
Yes, that's correct. And we have a COVID lead who meets with Public Health regularly, and then the procedures or how that gets rolled out within our school system is decided that way. We certainly receive reports on a regular basis every meeting. We're hearing reports, how things are going, and any new announcements. All trustees are kept up to date with that. But in terms of the actual how things are happening in the school, that is operational and happens through our staff.
Yeah, I think that differentiation is helpful because a lot of people don't understand that these decisions are not governance decisions. They are decisions made by administrators, be they public health, be they school board, be they municipal government. It's the administration that makes these decisions, just to be crystal clear, and how they get implemented in each workplace. Which leads me back to another question, Laurie. Uptake of vaccinations among staff, has that been an issue for this board?
We've actually had a great uptake. So really what staff have to do, they have to provide an attestation, whether they're vaccinated or not. And if they are not, then they participate in a testing program 3 times a week. And we are fortunate, 92% of our permanent staff members are fully vaccinated. So that for us is an excellent rate of vaccination. And we actually are required with the ministry to post our updated vaccination data on our website monthly. And the next update will be on December 8th. So folks can go in there and take a look at that if they so choose. We also are ensuring that all of our visitors to our schools have to self-screen for COVID prior to entering the building. And they, of course, have to wear masks. And they also must attest to their vaccination status upon entry to schools. So we're very pleased with the number that we have that are fully vaccinated. But if people are making a choice not to do so, then as I've mentioned, they can still do the testing 3 times a week.
Right. And just to be clear, the stories that we might hear from other school boards, in particular the large, I'm thinking of the Toronto District School Board or the Toronto Catholic School Board, which are very large boards. They may have chosen to implement their policies in a different way as opposed to Bluewater. Would that be a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. Some boards did go out early saying they set policies that all of their employees had to be vaccinated. We followed the ministry requirements, and that was that if a person just had to attest to their status, and then if the attestation was such that they weren't going to vaccinate, that they would choose to take a educational course, and also that they would attest. It just shifted from 2 times a week to now 3 times a week. So we did follow the ministry direction on that, but as you indicated, some boards chose not to do that right from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that can be confusing because we're dominated by larger media from other parts of the province, and we hear their stories, but we don't necessarily hear our stories.
Correct, and I would say from some of the media stories that I am now reading, those same boards that did force that are struggling because we are across the province, we are short-staffed in all areas. So I think they're struggling with the mandates they maybe put out there because they don't have staff to replace those folks that may choose not to vaccinate. So I did just read an article today where one board is delaying the timelines in which people have to be vaccinated just because they are short-staffed.
Yes, I saw that story as well, Laurie. But I think it does make the point that this is Bluewater. This is not TDSB or any of the other big boards in the province. And people really need to. I was going to say check the website to get the accurate information, including the minutes. Laurie or Jane, we can't forget the board minutes, which are always there, which tell us the policy decisions that you are making. So there's good information if people want to work towards it. Well, this is really helpful because I think that there's enough confusion out there and enough variance in opinions and dare I say arguments about this particular subject that the straight scoop is absolutely critical. So that's really, really helpful. Now speaking of how shall I say, political stuff in the school boards, I did want to ask you about the $10 a day daycare that has been negotiated across Canada by the federal government, but is subject to negotiation right now with the province of Ontario. And it's in negotiation, and we'll leave it at that. But I wanted to ask you, what will be the impact of that daycare, that subsidized daycare, $10 a day daycare on the school board, if any?
Well, it's hard to say. I know Jane and I do participate in teleconferences with the minister once a week, Minister Lecce, the education minister, and this has been brought up by one of the chairs of the boards, just more pressure to say, when will Ontario settle with the federal government in this regard? Because I think for families, they really are looking forward to that option. But for us, we are just always happy to work with our partners and in childcare and any new initiatives that might be coming our way. I mentioned earlier about our staffing issues. So I know we are short, for example, in our educational assistants and our early childhood educators. And I know that is the same case for our early years partners and those in childcare. They are struggling to staff their facilities. So in a way, we do compete for those resources, and we just make sure that we work with them. And I know one of the superintendents who has early years in her portfolio does meet frequently with our child care partners, just from Grey and Bruce counties. But we know that these spaces, these child care spaces, they are struggling already with wait lists in the area. So by decreasing the costs, I don't know that's going to help anything like with their wait lists. And in our schools, we're just very limited in how we can expand childcare centers. But anytime we have a new school build, we do look for the opportunity to have new childcare centers and partnerships in our buildings. So we do have 2 new business cases going forward to the ministry to see if they would fund them. One is for the Dundalk area and one is for Kincardine. And in that does include childcare spaces. So our fingers are crossed.
Well, certainly that's a very interesting and helpful perspective, because when we think just about daycare, we don't think about, okay, where's it going to be? And your point that workers are scarce, because it's, I know I've talked to the CEO of the Family Y, and they're here in Owen Sound, and yeah, they're struggling. Yes. Everybody's struggling. And so if someone is looking for a vocation or looking for work, get the training, and there are jobs, and there will be jobs. So something for people to think about. When actually that's a good segue into and this is a question for you, Jane. As chair of the board, you had the pleasure of opening a new school this fall.
I did indeed. Yes, that was lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was lovely to be back in a school because it's the first time for quite some time that we've been into school buildings. So it was really exciting to be there with all the students and the enthusiasm and the excitement.
Well, I know Mayor Barb Klumpus was speaking on this in a previous show, and she's very pleased and very proud of the new school that has been opened in Meaford, and it's state of the art, and everybody seems just delighted that things are looking so good.
Yeah, it really is an exciting. We were able to tour the building, and it's really exciting to be in a big, fresh building.
Yes. Does it still have the new fresh school smell?
Yeah.
I remember years ago, I started my high school in a school like that, and I think it took the change rooms in the gym about a year to develop that fragrance that they do. They clean them. They're the best way to clean them, but they still took a year to develop that special fragrance of locker rooms. But that's David, an enjoyable thing.
I was just going to say, I'm a former phys ed teacher and coach, so I know what you speak of in that regard. Anyway, when we would, just during the tour, walking into the new gymnasium, I mean, when you see a new gymnasium with the floor as shiny as it was the day we were there, it's just, actually some trustees had a pre-tour before the actual opening. So it's just a gorgeous facility. It's lovely, it's bright. When we did the pre-tour, there were many teachers in their classrooms at the end of the day. Students had been dismissed, and all of them pretty much, when we would go into the classrooms to chat, would talk about the brightness and the sunshine coming in. And it was just new and lovely and very functional and efficient. And it's just a great space.
Speaking of efficiency, one of the big issues these days, of course, is energy efficiency and reduction of emissions. Was the building designed with those criteria in mind, do you know?
I know that's like our plant department is always very, very conscientious of that. I would say absolutely yes, that was taken into consideration. I know that there are some special builds that I've read about that might be a green project build. So they go to the other end of the continuum. So it wasn't that, but certainly they would take the carbon emissions, things like that into account. And that's why it's just like in our own homes when we buy new appliances, for example. I know I had some older appliances, and then you get the new ones, and they clearly are much more energy efficient, and take a look at those kinds of things. So it will be the same for this build. Sure.
Now, what other builds are in progress across the school board?
Jane,
we have the Beavercrest School has been on our a topic of conversation for quite a long time now. It's progressing, albeit slowly. And then we're also working on our Kincardine, a new school in Kincardine. So those are the two builds that we have on the go at the moment.
Is there going to be any additions down at in Dundalk at all because of that expansion of the community itself?
Yes, we put forward a business case for Dundalk area just because of exactly what you have identified, and as well an elementary in Kincardine as well. The new build that we got approval for is 7 to 12, but we did put a proposal in for the K to 6. So that remains to be seen.
Now there's more building, and if you listen to the mayor of Owen Sound, as I did yesterday, there's a lot of new development that is happening, particularly across on I guess it's 8th Street, that whole new quadrant up by the hospital and Georgian College. Is there any is it too soon to talk about school expansion in Owen Sound, or is that just a matter of adjustment between the existing facilities?
Well, that's a great point, because I would say for us in Bluewater, our areas of growth, I mentioned certainly Dundalk, Beaver Valley area, Thornbury area, Port Elgin, Owen Sound are certainly all growth areas. A very good news story, we did experience a 1.8% increase in enrollment over the past few years, and 2 years, I'm sorry. So we are now at approximately 17,500 students. So for us, that's great, because we had been in decline for quite some time. And so for us, because we have been asked by the ministry to project conservatively last spring what our estimates would be. So for us, it was about 700 students over our conservative enrollment estimates. So Owen Sound is certainly on our radar. You never know when they bring in new housing, what the demographics might be. If it's going to be new young families with children, would it be retired folks? So certainly more investigation to do on our part, but it's great for us that we do have the enrollment increase that we're seeing.
Yes, that's a very good point. Does that change, Jane, this is for you, does that change any of the, for example, the number of trustees, or or is that looking at big numbers to change the number of trustees and that kind of thing?
My understanding would be it would take big numbers to change the number of trustees for us.
Okay, because I know some people will ask, well, if we're getting more students, do we need more trustees? Or so it just means that you, as trustees, you represent more people within the same geographic boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's always good to know, because dare I say it, elections are coming up in within less than a year.
Well, thanks. I was just going to mention that too, David, because that is something that I know Jane is chair, and we'll be looking at every year before elections, they do have to look at the number of trustees for the constituents that they serve in the schools. So, but I would agree, it would probably be a fairly substantial number that would shift it upwards.
Sure. Which reminds me, Jane, what about running for the position of trustee? I'm not asking you to make a commitment. I'm just saying in general, what's the process to run as a trustee?
Well, the election of trustees runs with the municipal election, so the same timing occurs when people can put their name forward to run. The same timing occurs in terms of putting signage up, all the same expectations. And if people are interested, I would certainly encourage them to look to find out more information about it. Certainly at their local municipal office, they can find out about putting their name forward in the election when that process opens up. And any of the trustees, I'm sure, would be happy to talk to another person who's interested to find out more about the job and what's entailed.
Sure. So the municipal clerks are the key people to find out the sort of mechanics, the nuts and bolts of elections, and an existing trustee is a good person to talk to find out about what the job is really about.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm sure that as chair, you would be most warmly welcoming of anyone who expresses an interest in this work.
It's always great to have people interested in education primarily, and in our students, and that put their names forward and are interested in doing the work. And the variety of voices that sits around our table is what makes us a better board. Because people all bring a slightly different perspective to the table. So certainly everyone is welcome.
Great. Well, we have to take a quick break, and we'll come back because there's more to talk about. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking, and we'll be right back.
program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose to be fulfilled in our territory. As we embrace our traditional teachings, we can lead the next generation into the fullness of what our Creator designed. Our shared history reveals a broken relationship, but as all Canadians commit to hear truth, acknowledge injustice, we can learn to walk in our traditional way, Letsamot, with a good heart and a good mind. Then all of our lives will be enriched. Kwasai.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests are Jane Thomson, who's the chair of the Bluewater District School Board, and Lori Wilder, who's the director of education. Jane and Lori, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we've really gone around the circle on a whole bunch of issues that I'm sure I'm curious about, but I keep asking this stuff. But we were talking about the changes in enrollment. And you mentioned, Lori, that you have to conservatively estimate the changes. Are you seeing a concrete impact on school enrollment as people move out of the GTA and establish themselves up here?
Well, that is our sense. I mean, to have 700 more students than we projected, even though we knew we were projecting conservatively, we didn't think it was that much. So something has obviously happened. And when we're looking at it and trying to review the data, we do think that there has been a move from the GTA area, because we know that here we are cottage country. And so some folks might have had a home there and a cottage here, so that they're perhaps moving full-time this way. It's hard to know, but we have really seen a significant increase. So we're very pleased about that. And when I do meet with my colleagues across the province, that's a discussion point that they are feeling it at the other end. So in some of those larger city type boards, they have lost students. So it would seem to make sense that that's where the ebb and flow goes.
It's interesting because I've had this conversation with politicians because that's what this show is all about. And it's the sort of out-migration out of the GTA or GTHA and the in-migration to places like Grey Bruce, Simcoe, other areas is an ongoing subject of conversation. But one of the more intriguing comments I heard from someone is that one of the staff here in Grey County said, we're seeing a change in the tone and interest in planning, that people are actually deeply interested. There are new faces. They are well-informed faces. They are asking very germane questions and important questions, but they're not voices that they have heard before or seen before. And I think that's reflective of both the interest in the community, but also the changing nature of the community. And I think it's an ongoing subject of conversation, kind of the reverse of where we were even 5 years ago when we were all worried about the depopulation of rural Ontario.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, I think that's a big factor. And we also, I think the ministry had asked us to put in our estimates conservatively because with COVID, we knew that we did have some younger learners, particularly in our junior kindergarten classes, where parents maybe didn't choose to send them last year. And we weren't sure what that would look like this year. But our sense would be, again, with the increase in enrollment, that parents are making the choice to send their children back to school. So they're feeling, and we feel too, that our health and safety protocols are really secure in our schools. And we're very proud of the work that's been done by all of our staff to ensure that's the case.
Well, I do have to say that it is a pleasure, and it has been a pleasure this fall when I walk my dog in the, at the appropriate times, which usually coincides with kids walking to school or coming home from school. And I sit right between two schools, but one elementary, one secondary, that it is a pleasure to hear the laughter, see the running, to see the games, the sheer exuberance of young people once again. So it, dare I say it, it lifts the spirit.
Oh, absolutely. And we're feeling the same within the buildings because, things, we still do have some protocols that are in place, but as we're also able to offer extracurricular activities and sports, clubs, things like that have been able to begin again. And we're just thrilled, and I know the students are too. It's great to even see in the media where sports teams are playing and competing against one another again. And so I think that has been dearly, dearly missed in the last little bit of time.
Yeah, you just got to remember to step off the sidewalk a bit while the kids run down the sidewalk doing cross-country training. And that's always interesting to see, especially in the colder weather. They're much braver than me, I'll tell you that. Much braver. But it's good. It's good to see. It's good to see. And it was also good to see, I might add, that to see a students participating, a very small number, but participating in the November 11th ceremonies. That they was somewhere. I saw some younger people from schools who were present, obviously either with parental permission, or a couple were participating in the Remembrance Day service itself here in Owen Sound, and that was good to see. That was very good. It was kind of like say, okay, we're getting back there into what has been and what we have come to appreciate deeply. And maybe if there's anything in all of this, we have come to appreciate more. Our schools, the events, even the laughter of kids as they walk to and from school. So we're getting there, slowly.
Absolutely.
Slowly. I wanted to ask you too, and this is another issue that was big early on in the school year, and that was busing. It seemed that there was always some kind of cancellation going on. Where are we at with busing?
I would say it's still a big concern for us at this time of year. I listened to the radio this morning, and it seemed to be a list that was growing as the reporter was speaking. It continues to be a big issue for us.
We do. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I would agree. Today was certainly weather related, but we know too that our bus operators are continuing to do their best to recruit and hire new drivers to make up for the number of drivers that have retired or who've chosen not to work due to COVID. But all of our routes, we have 315 routes with a consortium, which supports our board and our coterminus board. So they all have a driver, but there's a real shortage of spare drivers. So if that driver cancels for any reason, then that's where a route would be canceled. So we're just really working closely with our operators and the operators themselves. There's lots of incentives to try to attract people to the role of driving a bus, but it's not easy. But we're trying to work with them to help ensure and maintain bus operations because we know how important that is for families and how disruptive it is if a bus is canceled for them.
To be sure. To be sure, I did see that if you had an existing license that allowed you to drive buses, there was a very generous signing bonus available to you. And if you just had a Class G license, just regular cars, you would have there was still quite a nice bonus for signing and taking the training and working there. So there are opportunities if you choose.
No, you're right. They have implemented a lot of recruitment and retention strategies, such as that bonus that you mentioned. It's difficult because it's a split shift for people too. And some folks don't want that really. It's morning and evening. And so I know I do feel for the bus companies that are trying to attract these drivers. And as I mentioned earlier, we are just short-staffed everywhere.
Yeah.
Custodial group, our teachers, EAs, ECEs, like we are really short-staffed, and not just here locally. It seems to be a provincial issue.
I think there were a lot of retirements, and which kind of leads me into my next question. I know a number of teachers who have retired. They kind of have, I won't say aged out, but they reached a point where they said, okay, I've done my duty, and I'm going to try something else, or my health isn't great. I want to move on. What's the at the other end of the stream, so to speak? Are we seeing people picking up teaching as a vocation? Is this something that people are doing more of, or is it also a supply issue on the other end, on people who are attracted to the vocation?
It's hard to say. I mean, Teachers College used to be 1 year back in the day. It's now 2 years. So I do know of some people who might have chosen it if it were the 1 year program, but the 2 years added on, they go, no, thanks, I might try something else. So I think that might have been a distractor. I would wonder if they would, with their staffing shortages, if they would consider going back to the 1 year Teachers College program, but I'm really not sure on that aspect or not. But it's for me, I mean, even my own 2 children, I've tried to encourage them to go into teaching, but they said, no, thanks, Mom. And it's not, I mean, I have enjoyed my career immensely. So it's certainly not for me, not demonstrating it's a wonderful career for them to go into, but it's hard to say. And it's really just even not education. There just doesn't seem to be people for serving jobs. There's just seems to be staffing shortages everywhere. I don't know really what the answer is or why this is the case, but boy, it's really shifted, hasn't it, from when it was tough to maybe get a job to now. But I know Jane knows folks that are in Teachers College, and I just say more power to them. It's a great, great career.
My daughter is in her first year of Teachers College this year, enjoying it very much. Perhaps part of the backlog is there was a time that it was very hard. When you graduated, it was very hard to get a job. And perhaps there was, people chose other pathways because they couldn't get into teaching. And then it's going to take some time to graduate the new group that may come in and be ready to fill some of those positions. But I know we're looking for them.
I wonder if that's also true in many other vocations, that nursing, long-term care, whatever you want to choose, it's the supply has yet to catch up with the demand.
Mm-hmm.
So all we can do is hope and encourage.
Yes.
And encourage. But it's a very, if anyone is interested, I'm sure that Lori, the staff at the board would be only too happy to explore, to help people explore teaching as a vocation, would they not?
Absolutely. We're open for questions, available to support. We are hosting different interview days for all of our different employee groups, trying to do our best as well to recruit folks to come up to the beautiful Bluewater District School Board in Grey and Bruce counties. It's just a great place to live and work and play.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, that actually raises another question in my mind. While we may have a need of teachers, did I hear you correctly that you also have a need for support staff as well in the schools?
Yes, we sure do. Educational assistants, early childhood educators, custodians, office professionals, just all of our different groups for sure. And we are holding different interview days as well for those different support positions.
And if people wanted information on any of those positions, would that be on the school board's website?
For sure, or they could even just contact Human Resources here, and that would get them the information they needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of every job is unique and special, but I have to say that custodians always had a special place in my understanding of the school, simply because they sometimes had the messiest job, the hardest job, but they were good people, and you learn to appreciate them very much.
Absolutely. I can recall being an administrator in different buildings, and you wanted the custodians you wanted a great relationship because they do work so hard and they know the ins and outs of that building. And we would rely on them so much for the day-to-day operations, and they just do a fantastic job.
So
I think it's also wonderful to see the relationships they build with the students that perhaps are out of class in a hallway at an off time. I think the custodians often get to know those students and provide an extra supportive adult for them in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've heard it said in hospitals that that while the nurses and doctors do medical care, some of the more significant conversations actually happen when the cleaning staff come in to clean your room. Mm-hmm. So same could be said for custodians in our schools as well, because if they're in the hallways and they're there, they see everything. Mm-hmm. They see everything. What are some of the things that you hope will happen in the next 6 months? I don't want to put you on the spot by predicting anything, but if let's just say COVID began to relax, Lori, what would you like to see return to the school system?
Well, I would like to see in elementary that our students don't have to be cohorted, that there could be the freedom that they could go and just interact with all of their peers. I would like to see that we wouldn't have to mask anymore. That would be nice, just to see people's faces, just to have larger groups. I mean, one of the things the ministry did just come out with when we talked about new announcements, because we are moving indoors with the colder weather, the ministry has indicated that elementary schools now need to go to virtual assemblies. So we had a bit of latitude before. They didn't have to be virtual if you could space the cohort classrooms appropriately, but they're reverting back, and also parent-teacher interviews would be virtual. So I want the opportunity again to go back, that parents can freely come in and out of our buildings. They can meet with their teachers face-to-face for parent-teacher interviews, that our bands can start up again as opposed to just our cohorts in our classes. Just the freedom to move about the school the way we've been allowed to previously. I'm sure Jane might have some thoughts too.
Well, I was just going to say, I'd love to see the community back into our school buildings, either renting our spaces, but more importantly, viewing what our students are up to, be it sporting events or assemblies. I always enjoyed being able to go and watch and see what was happening in the school, and I'd like to see that return.
Well, it's going to be we usually talk about twice a year. So by the time we talk next, we may be able to see whether any of those wishes have indeed been fulfilled. You never know.
It feels like we're learning how to live with COVID and move along and find ways back to normal, shall we say. And that's exciting to see people being able to just move forward in the world.
The very good very good point, Laurie, because when you think of where we were a year ago and where we are today, we're in a very different place. So, yeah, and there is still hope, I trust.
Absolutely. We always have to be hopeful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, on my list, my laundry list here, I realized there was one ministry announcement we have yet to touch on, and that's de-streaming. What is de-stream? What does de-streaming mean, and what's the impact of that?
So de-streaming, when students leave grade 8, they're all together. Previously, they would have to select going into grade 9 what stream they would go into, whether it be applied, which was to be a more hands-on programming, or academic, which was more really in terms of research and just book sense as opposed to hands-on. Now the government has, just this past September, they moved towards de-streaming math. So that meant that all students leaving grade 8 would go into the same grade 9 math course. There was no levels, no applied, no academic. It was just called de-streamed. So we've been working through that this year. So recently, the announcement that came out that was surprising, I think, just because of chairs of boards had been asking the Minister of Education for information on this, as had directors across the province. And we really hadn't got a lot of information until a memo came out saying that they are going to fully de-stream grade 9 courses next year. So we are supportive of that from an equity point of view, and from students trying to adjust to secondary school and understand, their abilities and their futures, what they want to do. But it's just the breadth with which they're doing this. So grade 9 science will be de-streamed. And then what they're doing with English, French, and geography, they are taking the previous academic course or curriculum, and they are having everybody take that. So essentially it's all de-streamed. Like phys ed has always been what you would call, it's an open course, which would be de-streamed, as has music. So all of the grade 9s will be in just no leveled classrooms at all for next year.
And then it'll begin to move up a grade over the next 5 years?
Well, we've not been told that yet. We wait to see. We ask the questions, hope that we get information. So there's been no sense that grade 10 would go de-streamed, because there does come a point where a student has to make a choice, because they have to decide, am I going to, do I want to attend university or college or go to the workforce, all acceptable pathways. And so the requirements for those different pathways would mean that a student would eventually have to choose pathways such as university-bound or college-bound courses.
Interesting. I was hearing an exchange student, a student here in Owen Sound, who was in Germany for a year, and the system there is the absolute opposite. You're streamed at grade 4.
Wow.
If you can imagine. And at grade 4, and when you get to grade 5, you are then streamed. And there are separate, not only, but you don't have that in the same school. There are different schools.
Oh.
So it's probably the other extreme of this streaming de-streaming argument. I mean, it must obviously work in Germany, because that's the way they do it. But I certainly remember in my high school career, we really didn't have to make much choice until grade 10, if I'm not mistaken. That makes me old as dirt, but by the same token, I do remember that we all were all lumped together in roughly the same classes up until grade 10, and then you had to make some pretty serious choices, particularly in the maths and sciences. And that was that. And of course, that was also when we had grade 13 too, but that's a whole other argument. So it's a very interesting concept, and it'll be interesting to see how the government handles this, because in some ways we've been there before, in some ways it's new. And so we'll see.
Well, and I think, oh, Jane, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say your point about we'll see how the government handles it. It is very new news, and people are still trying to wrap their head around and ask questions. What does this mean? How will this work? The concept of not excluding a student that might have, because they're not mature enough to know that that wasn't their pathway, or because someone told them that was where they should go. That makes sense. But we also have to support all of our learners adequately within the new grade 9 de-streamed programming so that they all thrive in that new pathway. So there's lots of information that we're still waiting from the government to see how this will be handled.
Mm-hmm.
That is almost the watchword or the watch phrase whenever we have these conversations. We have to wait and see how the government handles this, because that's the impact. That then you have to figure out what the impact is in the school system, and parents have to figure out what's the impact is in their own homes and their own families and with their own children. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very challenging situation, and I'm sure in some ways exciting. In many different ways as both administrators and as trustees. We're almost out of time, but I also wanted to ask you, are you looking forward to Christmas? Well, that's a left field question. We've got about a minute left, or 2 minutes left.
Absolutely. I always look forward to time with family and friends. I do have, my son though has moved out to Vancouver. He's an adventure person, so he drove out there on his own. So I won't be seeing him, which is hard because I always like being around family, but I have a wonderful daughter that I'll see and her partner and my grand dog. So just having the time to be with family and friends is wonderful.
And Jane?
Absolutely. And it's always a nice opportunity. It feels like a time to catch your breath, reset, relax and be at home. And I always look forward to the new year and all the opportunities that come with that. So for sure.
And school is out early this year because Christmas is at the end, in the middle of the Christmas break. So lots of time to do this. We're almost out of time. I want to thank you both, Lori Wilder, who is the Director of Education, Jane Thomson, who is a trustee and chair of the board of Bluewater District School Board. Always a pleasure and so interesting to talk to you both. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. It's a pleasure.
And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll talk again.
Call the Rogers TV Viewer Response Line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Hello everyone, your host Antoine Hashim here on the couch, and welcome to season 8. Yay! 8 seasons, and we've got a lot of awesome guests coming up, so keep watching.
This November, get Crave and don't miss out on